Happy Hump Day, everybody. Welcome to the Do What Is Necessary live stream, coming to you live from a sunny short and t-shirt weather here in Columbus. Last week we had 2 inches of snow on the ground. This week it's like 82 degrees. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy to be back in shorts and a t-shirt. So let me know where you're tuning in from today. So we got a few that are joining us as repeat guests this week. We have Steve Brand joining us. Anybody want to get Steve a beer? You're welcome to, because I know it's beer time for you over in the UK. But yeah, thanks, Steve, for joining us today. Let me know that you can hear me okay. We'll get the video running all right before we bring on our awesome, cool guest this afternoon. So it's afternoon for me. It's 3 p.m. here in the Midwest. So we got Mike Joseph on the show today. So he want to say thank you for the T-shirt. So I'm going to give you a shout out right at the beginning of the show, Mike. So thank you for rocking the T-shirt. So there you are, my friend. That's Mike Joseph rocking his Team Orange T-shirt. So thanks for checking the show out again this week, Mike. We appreciate it. All right, there we go. Lots of comments coming in today. We've got a hot topic. We're gonna drop it like it's hot today. So we appreciate you tuning in to the show again today. So let me just flip over here. We'll see where we got everybody tuning in from. So Bruce Skinner joining the show today. So thank you, Bruce, for checking the show out again. Steve is from Aberdeen. And we've got Robert Givens joining us from the UK. So we got a strong UK contingent again this week, as normal. I've talked about switching the time of the show, but I've had a few people say, nope, this beer time, wine time in the evening works best for them, so we will leave well enough as is. Dan Foote, Anchorage, Alaska. So I think you are my first guest from Alaska, so welcome to the show, Dan. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We've got a very, very important topic for the IT industry, for entrepreneurs. Mike's tuning in from Mass, so right outside of Boston. So Mike said he loves my new merch pick with Mike. So appreciate that for sending that over. So all right, so we've got all the good stuff. Obviously, everybody can hear and see me all right. So let's get right into our topic and welcome our guest onto the show today. This is a repeat guest onto the show today. So welcome, Pete Matheson, to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here, as always.
We appreciate it, man. I think we were going back and forth, and I realized you were actually the very first guest that I had on this show. We started this show on April Fool's Day last year, and I think you and I did a show together. It was like June or July. I think it was in the summer. But yeah, good times. So I'm glad to have you back. I'm glad that we didn't put you into therapy with the first guest appearance here on the show. That's why I call it. This is afternoon therapy for me. In the middle of the week, this has given me something to do during COVID, and it's been fun. It's been a fun ride. So. And welcome a few more to the show. So Bruce and Steve are best buddies hanging out. So welcome, Dan. So if you guys have questions for Pete as we dive into the topic today, we talk about entrepreneurship. We talk about running a business, specifically an IT business, and the mental health crisis. That is our topic. Could this be the thing that brings down the IT industry? And I know that's kind of a clickbaity title, but I think the reality of where we're at right now in the IT industry cannot be minimized. So that's why I brought Pete on the show to talk about that, to be able to dive into a subject that I think for the most part in the IT industry is kind of taboo. Nobody really wants to tackle this topic, but we all know that it exists. But I think it's time that we get this conversation out into the open and really peel back some of the layers of being able to help the people that we love in the industry that Pete and I have a lot of affection for. So Pete, I figured you and I would catch up on the show. So you sold your MSP, I think, what was it, literally a week before lockdown last year?
Yeah, March the 5th. So for the UK here, 2 weeks before the lockdown happened.
Gotcha. So what's the ride been like since leaving the MSP game for you?
Personally, incredible in a way. I mean, obviously we've had a most horrendous year in terms of the lockdown and COVID and everything, but just the complete shift in what's happened from going from running a business through to this kind of new life where it's lots of YouTube, which I'm doing a lot of, working with other IT businesses, and it's just lifted a lot of stress and hassle and pressure off of me. So it's been incredible, and it sounds horrible because I know people have like lost their lives and lost their jobs and things, but equally, I can't lie, I've quite enjoyed the last year.
Yeah. Yes, you've had a lot more time with your family than before. We were talking a little bit before the show with that, and I think that's really why we do what we do. Is for the
Maybe a
people that
little
we
bit too
love.
much time with the family. I
Yeah,
wasn't quite planning on spending that much time,
I know
but
it's
it's
been
been
on the
fantastic.
reverse on my side. My wife will be happy when we go back to normal to get me out of the house with the label maker. Just get out of here. But no, it's been an interesting ride the last year, and and like I said, I started this show because I remember what it was like in 2008. Nowhere near what this last year has been. But when everything grinded to a halt, and I have a 4-year-old kid at home running a 4-year-old business, and I remember how lonely that was. I remember just trying to find somewhere to fit somebody that could understand what I was going through. And that's really what I want to kind of hone in on today, to help people to understand. Those of you who are in the tech industry, we understand the pressures of running the businesses in the IT industry, but I think I want this to also be an eye-opening thing for the people that might be our clients or potential clients, to really understand the nature of what this business is, and what it has been doing to people for a while. And I don't think we've quite seen the total effects of this last year. So Barbara, welcome from Nova Scotia, Canada. We appreciate you being a repeat guest as well. Barbara joined us we kicked off this conversation last week with my interview with Ian Adam, and we started to talk about those things, the work-life balance of being an entrepreneur. But just to enlighten everybody on, what is it really like running an MSP? From somebody who's been outside of the game less time than I've been out 7 years. June 30th this year, I've been out 7 years of running my own business. Got out of the IT industry in December of 2014 completely, and been doing this since. But help everybody understand what it's like to start, build, run, and eventually sell an MSP.
It's definitely challenging. There's a lot of kind of pressure that's put on you, but and it's funny coming out of it now. Coming out of this end and having sold and everything, you kind of realize that lots of the pressure was put on by yourself. The pressure is on you, and I had the same thing when I came home every day. You're just thinking, oh, if I do a little bit more work and check a few more emails and replace those emails, then you'll deliver a really good service and maybe you'll win some more customers. And it's just a bit of a never-ending cycle, I found personally. And it's very much all about personal self-control, because now I'm out of it. You know that you don't have to do that. You don't need to do that, but it's still a tempting thing of like, oh, well, an inquiry's come in, let's respond to it straight away. We need to respond to it because someone else is going to get them. And so it's just a bit of a never-ending cycle, I found personally. And there's all the challenges you've got to deal with. Yeah, particularly when you're starting up the business, you need to bring in money very, very quickly for most instances. You've left your security, your secure job. You've maybe got a few months or weeks or whatever of savings. Your focus is get some money in at all cost effectively. So you do whatever you can. But in the meantime, you still got to try and figure out the whole operations of how to run the business, the systems and services you need to be using, how to price things, how to go out and network with people. And, if you're a bit of an introvert like me, you don't really like going out and physically walking into rooms of people you don't know. There's all the things, the finances, the legals, the management, the customer relationship side of things. There is just so much and nobody, mostly within the MSP world, that certainly from my experience and from who I've met, most people are techies. We're really great at fixing things, but we have none of the other experience. Nobody's taught us how to do it. It's all just self-taught for most of us as well. So it's just, oh, it's challenging, man. You must have had the same thing, I imagine. Were you a bit of a tech head, and then you kind of moved into the starting the business and expanded from there?
I've been around business. My first business start. I was 8 years old when I started my first business. I know people laugh at that. I had a older brother that was like a little less than 2 years older than me, two older cousins. So we were always doing something. We actually, my first business was taking 10-pound slabs of chocolate, melting it down, putting it in molds, and going around my neighborhood selling it. Um, so I liked that aspect of being an entrepreneur and being able to find my own way. Got into the tech and, late into high school because I was into, cars, got into computer science. I think I was a junior in high school. Then when I got out, just that it was always in the back of my mind. I was working in a body shop, working in construction, and then kind of started my first IT job. I think it was just like 93, 94. So I've been in, the tech world for a long time and then got into the whole .com stuff in the late 90s. I was living up in New England. So that's kind of when the really the tech bug bit me then was what we saw around the .com era. And I remember, running a startup, everybody was just running full tilt. I was in my 20s, didn't know any different. I was like, this is great. Um, and then, the .com bubble burst and all of our customers and our revenue stream evaporated in like 90 days. And I remember that was like a weird feeling, being in my mid 20s, trying to figure that out. But you're right, as an entrepreneur, you have to do everything, especially in startup mode. Um, and I remember vividly being let go from my job in 2004. My son was 6 months old. And I remember I was like, okay, I'm not gonna go work for somebody else again. We're gonna start another business. I've been doing network logics on the side for a little while since I think from '99 to 2004. But that's when we relaunched as a full blown MSP was in 2004, and this was like super early in the days of MSP. Like the tools that are available now were like nowhere near what they are now. But I remember rolling change in my living room while my wife is taking care of my 6-month-old son to get this business off the ground. And that puts us in an extensive amount of pressure because, like you said, you're right. You don't have much in the bank, and it's sink or swim. But we did it. I turned it from rolling change in my living room till 10 years later being able to exit. It was a successful MSP. So, but yeah, let me know in the comments too. We'll throw a few comments in here. Let me know, let Pete and I know whether or not you are actually an IT business owner, because I think, for those working in IT, Barbara definitely agrees IT gets taken advantage of all the time. But I'm curious to know the business owners that are on the show, because I think it's a different dynamic. It's a different added pressure that we have as entrepreneurs and as business owners in this space, because people don't really realize how many hats you're wearing and what you're responsible for in IT.
I think one of the challenges you have is because when you're in that startup mode, you're going full tilt. And I think I saw a quote, was it last week, that working hard on something you love is called passion. Working hard on something you hate is called stress. And when you start a business, you're so passionate about everything, so you put all you can into it, and then it just kind of turns into the norm. So you've been doing those long days, you've been putting all the work in, but why would you slow down? Because you've been doing so well now that let's keep it going, keep the momentum. And then 6 months have gone, a year's gone, 5 years has gone, and it just becomes very tiresome after a while, having to continue doing that constantly. And it doesn't even you don't even think to change it, because that's how it's always been.
Yep.
And you couldn't start up, or I mean you could, but it's very difficult to start up a business with that mindset of, I'm just going to work 9 to 5. I'm going to maybe have Fridays off. I'm going to spend time with the family, because you might not be able to, because you need finances, you need to bring in the money, but you're just not in that mindset because you're enjoying it so much. And I'm kind of in that stage, and I'm very aware of it this time around with the various businesses I'm a part of, and the YouTube and the videos and the coaching side of things, that uh, I'm very much in the passion and loving it stage right now. But I need to make sure that it's sustainable, so I carry on loving it in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, and making it fit around what I want in my life this time around, rather than trying to go full tilt and then I'll hate it in 10 years and then need to change up again, or whatever it might be. So that's the challenge, I think, because you do start, um, you hit a certain kind of running rate, and then you just stay there until you pass out or
Yep.
stress hits. That's the thing, really.
Yeah, and I think in startup mode that we create a lot of bad habits, and it's hard. We talked about this before we went live. You and I are both workaholics. I'm still trying to recover from that, and I'm much more mindful of it this time around, like you mentioned, of how much I'm working and being able to have that passion, but being able to have it, work has its place. And I think it's a weird dynamic because we had a discussion a few weeks ago on work-life balance. Um, and that was like, I think I did a poll on LinkedIn. It was like 8,000 views, and that was like, but anyway, it's something that people still struggle with. But I look back on that, like you mentioned, I created a lot of those bad habits in startup mode, so it's hard to backpedal on that. And because you kind of created you've created this monster that's kind of, animal of its own at some point as well. So based upon, kind of your takeaways with that now, I think you and I both have gone through that now that we're kind of on the outside looking in, if you will. We're able to see those things a little more clearly. Like I can pretty much spot somebody who's pretty close to burnout, who's pretty close to the edge, fairly quickly just in comments and how people interact online. But it's from being there. That's where I was 7 years ago. I remember, working 70, 80, 90 hours a week was a badge of honor. Like I was proud of that. And the problem is that it takes its toll on you after a while. And I think so. How do we help MSPs who want to stay MSPs be able to think a little bit differently about that? Now, I kind of want to, talk a little bit about that. So we got quite a few that have commented as well. So we got Adam Voss on here as well. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You may know Adam. Yes, business owner. It's very hard. So many hats to wear. So yeah, it is. And Dan's been at it a while too. Dan Foote from Alaska has been at it 15 years. Yeah, and again, sometimes I want to talk about that too at some point too. He says he's a slow growth company. And I want to talk a little bit about that kind of peer pressure that goes on in this industry, and I think in the entrepreneurial community in general, about how big you need to grow. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So Steve said he started G5 Technologies in 2004. So yes, we were born together, I guess, Steve. So see, we're connected way back. Here we are, a long time later. Adam says, yes, it's hard on your own. We're getting through a step change, which has been very difficult for us. He also said he's also been working with you, so he picked a smart choice. He's given me a sounding board as a virtual business partner to Resonate. Highly recommend.
That's not a paid for one, but thank you,
Now,
Adam.
but that's what I want to talk about today, too, is the resources that are available for MSPs that want to stay running but don't want to get to the place that I was 7 years ago. And I think you were either at that point or reaching that point, a year ago. So, let's talk a little bit, about that. How do we help MSPs be able to basically change that dynamic of trying to wear too many hats, trying to, because I think there's a fine line between providing good customer service and then having a life while running an IT business as well. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that.
One of the first ones as well is the business owners. And this is such a difficult one because the business owners themselves are so passionate and they're trying to focus on their staff and look after their staff. And even lots of the stuff I do with my clients is all around making sure your staff are okay and checking in on their mental health. And that's a big challenge in itself. There's not many moments where you get to stop and think about yourself and your own mental health, even though you probably already know it's suffering or you're stressed. But I remember we were going through a challenging time once back in the day of running an IT company, and one member of staff turned around and said, like, he just asked that question, like, "Are you okay, Pete?" And he was the first person that had asked that of like the month or two of this like huge stress we were all going through. And it kind of floored me at that time. The fact I remember it now to that day is just, I mean, that speaks volumes. But no one seems to really look out for the business owners themselves. So it's important, of course, that you look after your staff, but it's also more important, you're the one steering the ship, that you need someone looking out for you, or at least you need to be aware that you can take the time out or go and get help for yourself, or get some mental health training and those kind of things. Because one of my first go-tos is deploy a, a staff CSAT tool where you're surveying your staff and making sure they're happy and they're on target and they've got the right training and all those kind of things. But not at one point do you point that tool at yourself and then ask those same questions of yourself. So that's definitely one of the first challenges. And then the second one is just, it's knowing that you can take the time off. And that's such a big and difficult topic, because everybody feels and knows through and through that they can't take time off, because if they do, the business will fall apart. They'll lose customers. Staff won't be able to do their job because they need to ask you questions. And 100% you believe that, because that's what it is. Because you're sat there in your office, people are asking you questions, you're dealing with emails. Like, what if you can't just switch it all off? And there is no real easy solution to any of that, because that's just that's the business wheel is turning. And the thing that that surprised me, much like any employee, I think, really, everyone thinks when they leave a company, the company's going to fall apart, because you're so kind of fundamentally a part of that business, whether you are an employee or whether you're the business owner. And seeing the transition going from running the company to handing it over to somebody, a completely different set of people, and it's still carried on. It's still there today, and still got the staff and the customers and those kind of things. So it is possible. It just makes you think, oh, I could have had time out. I just chose not to. And this goes to, I can't remember if we said it before the stream or in this one, but it comes down to it being a choice. It is your choice. You are prioritizing work over your mental health. You are choosing to prioritize work over time off with the family. And it's that choice that you need to try and shift and adjust and get comfortable with. There's that whole thing from, what is it, one of Mike McCulloch's books. Is that Pumpkin Plan, maybe, where you take off a short period of time, it's completely switch everything off, but take off a short period of time. Then you come back. If there's any issues, you deal with those issues. Then you take slightly longer off, come back, fix the issues, and you get to the stage where you've done that, and you can comfortably have a month off, and nobody drops the ball whilst you're away. Customers are all happy, staff are all happy. And I think that is such an important thing to try and implement if you can do. But it's so difficult, because particularly the world where we are right now, there are MSPs that are struggling. There are some that have niched into a market which is absolutely at its knees for like travel industry and airlines and those kind of things. That is a difficult situation, and genuinely, I wouldn't really know what to recommend, because you are struggling. Other than get out your niche and pivot, as a Friends famous character would say, pivot to something where you can start kind of earning the income. Maybe you can return to that at some point, but it's a massive topic. Absolutely.
Yep. And I think, nothing about this topic is easy. And, I think that's why a lot of people are afraid to touch the topic. But I think, you had touched on it being a choice. I learned a lot from Mike. I met Mike in 2012. And it was funny how we met. He was actually on stage, and I, just Twitter messaged him. I'm like, hey, I'll buy you a beer afterwards, thinking it was never going to happen. We ended up having dinner that night. But I learned a lot in that last couple of years leading up to the sale from Mike, and that was one of the big things that he taught me, and it is in Pumpkin Plan, that being an entrepreneur, that the definition of that is you don't do everything. You create the systems and process for people to be able to execute. And that was the mind shift that was different for me, because like you said, I was used to, okay, if I don't do this, if I'm not involved, it's not going to get done right, and we're going to have to redo it, or we're going to lose a customer over it. So I think a lot of that, is displacing that fear that's in our own heads as business owners, and just, kind of taking that leap of faith. But I think it goes back to creating those systems and process for people to be able to just walk, And that's hard. It's hard for people to go back and do that after the fact. But I think that's the first step to gaining that freedom. And again, sitting on the outside looking in, looking back on that, that's definitely something I wish I had done sooner, because I kept everything in my head. And we know, like, I had people's passwords memorized in my head, for certain accounts, so people didn't have to look it up in ConnectWise. I just knew if I was standing over their shoulder. But I think that's key, is just overcoming that fear and making that decision that you have that right to choose. And a lot of times we don't feel like it is. So lots of comments coming in on this, and this is what I want. I want to encourage discussion on how we change, just ideas of how we help each other. Yeah, Barbara said too, she said, I'm my worst enemy for working. I started using the tools to turn off notifications. I set out of office replies and broke the clients of the habit of reaching me immediately. And that was really tough to do. That was probably the hardest thing, because we train our customers. We give them our cell phones, especially when we're first starting out. So it's hard to wean them off of calling your cell phone and to call the office, and you have staff now. So if you're just starting an MSP, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
You ever emailed Nigel from the Tech Tribe?
Yeah.
He is the best out-of-office response ever. It's just a blanket. I don't read my emails. Here are the people you need to contact for the various things. If it's important, my secretary will flag it, and I will get to it in maybe a week or two. Yep. And that's like sex expectations. Hey, if it's urgent, if it's a customer problem, then it will get redirected to the right department. But yeah, it's fantastic, and like everybody should do that. It makes such a good use of the email tool.
And that's I still do that. We talked about that before the show. Like, all notifications are turned off on my phone. Like, it is in do not disturb mode 24/7. I pick up my phone literally twice a day. I think the notification I got Sunday. I think 8 minutes a day was my iPhone report last week.
Oh, mine is really bad, but that's by choice.
Yeah, and, I did a whole show about this a few months ago, and I think, how many times a day do you pick up your phone? And I think us as IT people, that's especially, like, we're constantly on that because that's what we do. So it's hard to break that habit. But I love that, Barbara, and that you've taken, turning the notifications off. And I've done that because I remember when COVID first started, that's kind of what happened to me. And that's why they're completely off now. Because notifications were constantly going off. Everybody had to work from home. Everybody knew. I didn't even have an IT business, but I was getting calls from all over the country from people that I've helped 10 years ago that want help figuring this out now. Besides friends and family, just everybody's bored at home and are texting you. But that's where I found my mental state going haywire. And I remember that was like Pavlov's dog. I remember when notifications would go off, I remember how I felt a year ago was exactly how I felt 7 years ago. That every time a notification went off, my blood pressure would raise. Like, you get flustered because I knew that it was likely a problem that I had to fix. So that's probably a minimal easy step to take, but it's hard for your own mental sanity, I would definitely do that. I've actually seen some companies turning off the notifications in their office where their techs are, just because it's kind of it is. It's like, that science experiment. When the alert goes off, everybody's blood pressure goes up. Everybody's on high alert, and that's not necessary. It's always been that way in the IT industry, but I think the critical measure we're seeing that now in mental health, I think that might be an important thing. Maybe it's just one day where you turn all the notifications off and kind of take turns. But I think we're going to have to get creative in dealing with that solution. But like you said, I think it starts at the top. It starts from the people, those of us that are leading companies need to start, because we set a lot of expectations on our staff because of how we work. They think they have to work the same way. So I think that, that's important. So Mike said he's been in the business since 2002, so he's been around for a while. But again, if you guys have recommendations of things that are working for you, or decisions that you've had to make, or changes that you've had to make to save your mental sanity, share those, because it may be something Pete and I have not thought of doing. But that's one of the first things that I did, during that, like the first 8 weeks of the COVID, like it was nuts. Like I literally, like I found myself in a mental state that I was 7 years ago, and I'm like, I'm not going back there. So it's like from that day, you have to reset expectations. I've reset expectations with my family, my friends. I'm like, look, you text me, I'm going to check it twice a day. I check it at 11:30 before lunch. That's the last half hour before lunch, and I check it at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. Anything comes in before or after that, that's when I deal with it.
But you've made me recheck my my notifications. I'm trying a new Android phone out. I'm trying to switch from iPhone to Android, and there's a screensaver that tells you how many times you've unlocked your phone. And I don't know if it will focus on that. It's probably not going to focus. Oh, next, my face is in the way.
There it goes. Yep. 20 times?
It's at the very top.
Oh, okay. 71?
Basically, it's 71 times. And I told you before this live stream that I've just played a round of golf for the whole day and didn't look at my phone once. So that means I've unlocked it 71 times in an actual relatively very small amount of time. So that's, made me think again.
So I think that that's a practical thing that we can do as IT owners. And that was one of the things I would suggest, even if it's just 1 day a week, start there. But I think, we don't do enough of that as business owners to take that time because we don't think that we can afford it. But, you hit the nail on the head. If we don't take that time, there's nobody leading the ship. And our staff looks to us as that example. So
there's one practical thing I might want to mention, actually. That's there's quite a few MSP owners that I work with and that I've spoken to. And I mean, it's common practice, I think, really, that when you're in that small startup phase, and even when you're a larger business, I think actually, you'll take the clients on, you'll promise to deliver the work really, really quickly. Hey, you want the work done? Yeah, we'll do that for you. It doesn't matter what our lead times are, we'll do it. And what that means is either the staff or the actual owners themselves are doing the work in their evenings and in their spare time. Yep. And for free. They're not charging anything extra for it. Whereas actually the practical response should be to those clients of, yes, we can do that. We are fully booked up until, whenever your next proper availability is in terms of the scheduling. Or we can do that for you sooner, but it's going to be out of hours. It's going to cost you extra. So it turns that kind of process from doing it for completely free and in a very quick response time to actually putting it back on the customer and saying, hey, we can deliver it in normal working hours, but it's going to be 2 weeks or a month off. Or we can still do it overnight. If it really is that kind of desperately urgent, then we'll do it, but you've got to pay extra for it.
Yep.
And that's a win-win because you then get paid extra for it, whether it's you doing it yourself or you're paying a member of staff to do it. But just the fact of getting paid for it. And there are so many MSPs out there that are doing a lot of work and not getting paid for it because they just think that they need to because they need to win the business or the customers are going to go somewhere else if they don't charge for it. And there are so many people that I deal with that bill a lot of like pay and go stuff, but they're just not charging for it because again they just don't want to. But they're going to get an invoice. They're probably going to not like it if they get an invoice. It's like, yeah, but you're spending a lot of time on these little bits and bobs. And that just adds more stress because you feel like you're working all the hours of the day because you are, but you're not charging for half of it. Yep. And then you wonder why maybe you haven't got enough income coming in. Whereas actually, if you just build for that time, you'd be happy as Larry because you get the income in, put you in a really stable position. So there are those small tweaks where you just change the communication back to the client and just say, hey, this is the situation. We can do it, but it's going to cost you extra. Yep. That's such a big shift change.
And I think, now more than ever, if I was an MSP and you needed to reset expectations with clients, I think now is like the perfect time because they're all doing it themselves. They're all resetting expectations inside their own companies. So I think it's time for us to take that lead in, okay, we've been doing this for a while. This is a change that we're going to need to make. And like you said, again, it goes back to that fear in our own minds as to what could happen. But I found that, over 10 years of running an MSP, every time that we increased pricing or we did things like that, we didn't lose a single customer. And it was funny because I actually had one customer come back and said, I was wondering when you were going to start charging us for that. And he's like, I fully expected to pay for that. And, your customers understand, especially, we deal a lot with decision makers, business owners themselves inside the companies we service. So they know. But I think now is a perfect time to go back and reset expectations of what's in your contracts, what's serviceable, what's not serviceable, and just it is a perfect time to do that. But that is a great suggestion. So I think from
I
the
think the capacity
practical,
planning section is actually a really important thing because if you are working all hours of the day, and if you just bill for it, and you're still maybe a week or two out because you've got so much work stacked up, well, if you're actually billing for that properly, that would probably pay for the next person of staff to come on and then take the workload off you if
yep,
you're billing for it properly. And then, hey, if you're a month or 2 months out, that's the next person, so you can start stacking up, have multiple engineers working on the project work. So it all goes towards, if you just set the expectations, like you say, properly from the get go, and get the work done properly, hopefully by your staff if you've got the staff that can do it. I appreciate with the smaller MSPs, it's difficult because the owners themselves are probably the most senior technical person, so they're still trying to work that challenge of getting the senior work away from them, and that's a difficult challenge in itself because and maybe we chat about that briefly, but recruiting the senior technical staff, I don't know about you, but it's such a difficult thing. In all
yep,
the businesses I've been in the business that I owned, to hire in at the senior level is so difficult because you're looking for someone that's very generally good at everything.
yep,
Whereas if you go and recruit for a specialist, recruit for a senior person, you'll just get a specialist. You'll get someone that knows 365 inside and out, but nothing else. You'll get Citrix through and through, but nothing else. And it's such a difficult position to be in. So we always found it's best to um, recruit at the junior level and bring them through the company, and that's happened in 2 or 3 businesses that I've worked in. But I'd be interested to know if anyone else is having that same issue with hiring senior techs, because it's one of the first things you want to try and get away from yourself because you are the senior tech, but
yep.
it's one of the most difficult people to hire.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So if you have comments on things that are working for you as far as hiring, I'm gonna jump back over to some of the folks who've jumped in. I'm gonna cover Dan's. He said we look for quality clients versus quantity. Quality allows us to better focus on the service delivery. Quantity brings in a level of anxiety that simply compounds the anxieties that already exist in the industry. Um, so that's an interesting dynamic too. But having that mindset, that was one of the things I got from Mike McAllowitz in Pumpkin Plan, was going back and pruning the vine, getting rid of bad clients. But it's more important to never take on those bad clients in the first place. So I think part of that
I think
gets,
that's quite a difficult thing because you need to go through some of those to be able to spot the difficult clients.
yep,
And it's only when you get to a certain stage, and we had that. Oh, it was really late in the years, maybe like 6 or 7 years in, where I was at the initial sales meeting or the prospecting, or even in some cases, we were multiple meetings in just before signing the quote off, and I would be turning around saying, "Look, I'm just not getting a good feeling about this. I think if you're not sure about this, then you're going to really hate it when we send you like the quote for the server refresh or whatever it's going to be." So, if you're not feeling right, then hey, there's no pressure. Just let's kind of call it quits, and we can help you find somewhere else, because it's the wrong thing to do to take it on for the sake of it. Absolutely.
yeah, and again, it's really tough to do to fight that challenge when you're in startup mode. When all you need is anybody who can write a check and fog a mirror, you're a
You want to
customer.
pay me money? I'll take your money. Yep.
That's super hard to do. So, Chris said too, I wonder if taking time off is putting more work on my staff, and wonder if I would increase their workload stress for doing that. Um, that's an interesting dynamic, but I think too, if they're involved in the decision and they're involved and know that they will get their turn as well. I think that's kind of a communication thing internally for staff. That's how I would approach that, because yes,
I think with Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
it may increase their workload in the interim, but I think if this is a discussion that you're having as a company, that you're interested in the well-being and mental health of your employees as well. This is our plan for dealing with that, and they know that they're included in that process. I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise. They know that they're going to have to carry the load if you decide, okay, I'm going to take 1 day a week or 1 day a month where I'm checking out. So, what would your
We did a
suggestion?
few situations both in my own MSP and with ones I've worked with previously, where we would just say, if you've got a lot of work coming through, just buy everyone pizza, maybe pay them, maybe pay them overtime. There are some situations, not myself, but in my previous MSP, where they're like, we've got a difficult situation, we're struggling, but we need to get the work done. can we just buy you pizza? We can't pay you for it, but can we just buy you pizza? Everyone's stuck in because everyone knows, hey, we need to really get stuck in here. We need to get the work done so we can then get on top of things. So just simple things like that, like just, pizza goes down really well with engineers. So
Yep.
if you can just say, hey, let's just everyone stay till 10 o'clock if you want to. There's no pressure or anything, but it would be great if we can all stay on and let's just bash through the work. And then tomorrow we can come in. We've caught on up everything. We've done all the kind of day-to-day stuff. So let's just now set the precedent of now we're doing 9 to 5 because we're on top of stuff. And if you've got, so much work that actually you are doing it every single night from the technical work, then have a few nights. Maybe do a late night Wednesday every week where you just buy the pizza and pay a bit of overtime. Something that you can talk about with the staff and just say, hey, we've got the work. How do we deal with this? What would you guys be happy with?
Yeah, and I think you touched on that right there. Get your staff involved in the conversation. I think that was one of the worst mistakes that I made, early on when we were bringing new people on, is just dictating to them all day. You need to do it this way. This is what I want you to do. When I started getting my staff involved in like creating SOPs, creating our processes and getting input on that changed completely how invested they were. And it was easier to get them to commit when we needed them to do a little bit of extra. But that's what we told them. This is not going to become the normal habit. But that's what we would do. Like every Friday afternoon, we would debrief all of the service tickets for the week. And I would let them come up with the ideas of how do we make this ticket never come in the first place? If it comes in, how can we automate the solution? And 3, is this an education issue? Is this a matter of educating our clients a little bit better of how to actually manage that on their own and empowering them? Those 3 things worked well, but yes, you have to have your staff involved. But yeah, again, it goes back to that fear, Chris, of, your staff's going to run out the door screaming, because you want to take a day off. But again, if they know that you guys are going to get the same thing, that maybe that's what you do for your staff. Okay, you guys have one extra day off now because of all the things we've dealt with over the last year. I think you got to get creative right now more than ever. LinkedIn actually gave their entire staff April 5th through the 9th. Everybody was off. So I don't know. I meant to cover that on my show, but I thought that was an interesting thing I realized we couldn't do that in the IT industry. But I thought it was creating something that was outside the box, that they understood the extra pressure that this last year has brought on everybody and decided that's how they were going to deal with it. I couldn't tell you how many people internally in that company, posted. I'm connected with a couple senior folks at LinkedIn, and like the goodwill that you bought from doing something small like that will last years. I've had people say they will not go anyplace else, because even a company that large like LinkedIn gets it. Like they decided they were going to be proactive and do something about it. So again, you know your staff better than Pete and I do as to, what would resonate the most with your staff as far as being able to give them the time off and the extra time. And, that's going to allow that reciprocity. They're going to want to follow that leader, somebody like yourself who's doing the proactive things. And that's really, why I wanted to start this discussion of how we change it and just thinking outside of what everybody else says that we should do. That's what this whole show is, doing what's necessary for you and stop listening to everybody else. Pete and I will just give you suggestions. And again, it's up to you to kind of take these and figure out what actually works for yourself. But a lot of it we carry inside of our own heads as entrepreneurs, especially in the tech industry. So Dan said the same thing. He has the same problem. He's his, major challenge for him, being your own worst enemy. See, Steve here said, I've not carried out any IT work for about 6 years now. My role is business development and paying suppliers and wages. So kudos to you for creating that structure that allows your staff to be able to carry that out. And that doesn't get done enough. And I think, kind of touched on that. What point did you start realizing too, Pete, that creating those processes for people to just take the ball and run with it, like when did you really start getting, drilled into doing that, and so that you could kind of peel away and focus like Steve is on the business development?
I think it was fairly early on in a sense, but also going back to the whole enjoyment and passion thing. I actually still liked doing some of the technical stuff. So by choice, I was still working. Some days and still right towards the end, I would still sit on a help desk because it's just nice to have the FaceTime with the customers and see what's really going on. Almost like that, like the secret boss type thing, but obviously not secret because everyone knows you're there. But it was just nice to speak to those customers and having that experience. Just simple things like that. It just have a big impact on the staff and the customers as well, just to see that's going on.
I think that's something. It does get easier, and I like how Adam chimed in too for Chris. Definitely the first time is hard, but then it does get easier. His last holiday, they told it was better without me. Yes, again, sometimes we create, just our presence can kind of create that tension. So, and again, I think that's telling too that one of your staff pointed that out for you last year too, asking if you were okay. Because everybody's watching whether we think they are or not. And again, I think so much goes back to our example as business owners and what we set as the standard of what can and can't be done. But yeah, thanks for Adam for helping out there too. Mike said decentralized command is jock willing extreme ownership terms. I'm not familiar with jock willing, but yeah, I think that is super hard to do to be able to let go of your baby. I've read a lot of people view their business as their child. And that was one of the things that I'm adamant that it was interesting. I've posted that a few times, and I've talked about that on the show previously, was viewing your company as a product and not your child. That's something that I wish I had done with my last, because your approach is different if you view your company as a product like software, where, yes, it's got bugs in it, so you work to fix the bugs, and it's constantly improving. And that's hard to do, is to think of it in those terms, but I wish I would have, because that was kind of the tough transition for me when I sold the company, and I finally, after working 6 months in the transition where I was completely out of it at that point, I realized how much of my self-esteem and self-worth was tied to that company because of viewing it as your kid.
And just decision making as well. I found that very much like yourself, coming out and now starting these various new businesses that we're doing, the focus from day one is delegate from day one. One of my first hires, or one of the first things I did was hire a VA, and we didn't have a VA or a PA or anyone to kind of manage my work and schedule and anything along those lines. But now I'm so focused on, I just need to offload anything that's unnecessary straight away, so that I don't get bogged down in the detail. I don't get used to that, so it's not the new standard, and just hand it out. And that's the only way you can really scale, is by having that focus from day one of, let's just get off anything that's unnecessary. Yeah, accounts and billing and the techie work and the legals and really to the point, if you want to, of course, because it's all driven again by your choices and your decisions of where do you want to be. And very much for myself, the great kind of situation would be that you would be that visionary person. You're kind of sat at the top, kind of deciding what the direction of the company and maybe the products you're going to use and all the services and those kind of things. And then you can step away, have your holiday, everything carries on running because that's the day-to-day stuff that's still going. And then you can come back and go, okay, today we're going to do this. And I was really bad at doing that, because I'd do that like every other week and all the staff would have to catch up with me. But yeah, learning curve for sure.
Yeah, but I think it's possible. I think, again, looking back on what things I would fix in my MSP, knowing what I know now and just the different approach to it, that's exactly what I would have done much sooner. I didn't start doing those things until the recession hit, because I was relying on, referrals and just whatever fell in our lap. Excuse me. But I started at that point creating, man. Anyway, it's allergy season. We talked about that beforehand too.
I've also just noticed I've made a big faux pas. Hang on a minute, I need to fix it.
I'm going to mute myself real quick, take a drink. All right.
Is that orange? It's kind of orange.
It's
It's not bright enough to be orange. I just changed the background color. I realized I should have tried to match it.
It's all good. But yeah, I think that I would have done that much sooner. The delegation process, and I think we see that in the different forums and the different people that we coach right now that have a hard time with that delegation, hiring a personal assistant or a VA. But kind of talk about that, just kind of the process for that as you've stepped away, started a new company. How would you change that if you were still running your MSP?
Just do more of that first. I think that's the focus, and that's the interesting thing, because when you do step away from it, I look back on myself and how I was running things, and you see so many opportunities to fix those problems or get yourself out, to free yourself up to do the more important things, which is helping find the new clients and the direction of the company and the strategy and all the. And this is why I love the coaching stuff, because it's my opportunity now to do all of the fun stuff. Like let's look at how we're going to price up things. Let's look at marketing strategy. Let's deal with all the challenges without having to get into the day to day, the staff issues and HR and legals and unhappy clients and those kind of things. We still get to deal with those, but the focus is more on the higher level stuff that's going to make a bigger change overall. And when you're not in it every day, like you say, it's when you stop treating it like a child. When you're losing a customer, you don't take it so hard.
Yep.
You just look at the stats and actually make time and time I'd look at the stats and go, we've got these customers that are making a loss or making we're not making anything off of, but they're really nice people and I really like them. But actually, you carry on doing that for so long, and you just don't get anywhere because you were just putting so much time and effort into them. When actually, if you step back and took off the personal connection kind of hat, you can then go, okay, we need to fix this. We either need to approach them and discuss some changes or billing increases or whatever it's going to be, or we need to drop them and then focus on the profitable clients, which is a horrible decision many people have to go through. And that's why we struggle, because you don't want to just drop the clients because you like them. And
Right.
actually, again, if that's your choice, then that's your choice. But it does get to a stage when you step back and you go, well, hey, we've got a lot of these clients that are not bringing in profit or revenue or income or whatever it is. We need to do something about it. And it becomes a lot easier once you're detached than being in the day-to-day constantly.
Yeah. And I think, if you're listening to this live on the show or you're watching this after the fact, that would probably be one of the best takeaways that I could give you, is to do that. The sooner you start viewing your company as a product instead of something that you're emotionally attached to, like Pete said, your decisions do change dramatically just in your viewpoint. But it does. It changes. Okay, it's about improvement, and cutting out the stuff that isn't working for you does become easier. That was one of the things Mike Michalowicz taught me, because that was the first time I met him. He was promoting Pumpkin Plan. But he walks you through a process of being able to grade your customers, and it's not always about how much money they give you, how big of the check is that they write you every month. Because what I actually found is one of our top paying customers was also our worst customer. And because every time that an email came in, ticket was put in, or he'd be on the phone, or anybody from his company, again, it raised tensions in the office. Everybody hated working with them. And that was difficult for me because I was emotionally attached to it, because he's connected to 2 or 3 other clients because they were in the same industry. So it was a tough decision to make. And I remember being on getting some advice directly from Mike on that. And sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And that was one of the best decisions that I made as an MSP. I remember that day vividly. He had called me arguing because I think we made $25 on a print cartridge. We made $25 profit on a print cartridge that we overnighted to one of his offices on a Saturday. And that was the premium for making me do it on a Friday night. to get it there. So he was all bent out of shape about that. But I remember that conversation vividly, that was the day I was all done. And that was the day I told him, you're paid through the end of the month. We're going to make it as easy as possible for you to transition to somebody else, but you need to go find somebody else. And I remember that vividly because this was like a $5,000 a month contract. So it was hard from financially, but that was the best thing that I could have done, was getting rid of him. But the staff was ecstatic because, it was just that relief. And that is one of those other things that it's hard to do as a business owner, but I think it's essential because it was great because the 3 customers that I was worried about losing, because they all knew him and he sat on the board of directors for the association. When I went and told those other 3 that, okay, we let so-and-so, we dropped him as a client. We just wanted to let you know what happened, so you hear it from us. All 3 of them said, I can't believe you hired him. You took him on as a client in the first place. They all knew what a jerk he was. And it was interesting because the director of the association that was one of our top clients, she would tell me every time they had a board meeting, there was somebody on the board that was trying to get our contract kicked because he thought they were paying too much. It turns out it was him. And she finally told me that after, him being a customer for like 3 years. She's like, it was him. It was him that has been trying to get rid of your contract for 10 years. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but it really allowed me to be mentally free. And an interesting thing happened. We picked up 3 extra customers in 90 days that doubled what we were making from him. But the extra time and effort we were taking and being sidetracked with him, it freed us up to be able to have the bandwidth to take on 3 new customers. So again, that gets easier to do if you are viewing your company as a product versus something you're emotionally attached to. So, but
we created for those of you using like ConnectWise and BrightGauge specifically, it was a bit complicated, but within BrightGauge, we created a dashboard that took into account, obviously it doesn't take into account like personal, whatever's going on in the business, but it accounted for the total amount of actual time you'd spent across everything you were doing for that client. And then, took on the profit and for the various products or services or the support you were giving them. And it gave us a really nice figure. So we could really clearly see at the end of every month which clients, from a financial point of view, didn't make sense. And then you just then look at that and go, okay, do I still want them because of whatever else is going on? Or do I need to have a discussion? And we got a very similar story to yours, actually, that I won't go for too long, but we essentially had a client that was, they hired an external contractor to come in and do a few other things. They used to run an IT company, so they came in and started picking apart everything we did. We literally deployed some software, did a fixed price installation, and this contractor then come back and said, no, we don't want to pay the fixed price. We want to pay exactly the amount of time you spent configuring it because I don't believe you spent that long doing it or whatever it was. And that was like the tip of the iceberg. There was so much else that we were doing. We were having to pull apart the reports every single month for them, trying to explain ourselves. And it was one of the most difficult things. We had to sit down and put that email together to say, I'm sorry, but this isn't working. Like we need to help you find someone else because here's your notice. I'm sorry, but no, thank you. We sent the email and we got an email back fairly quickly from the customer themselves saying, and I remember it so well. It was just one line of, Pete, can we talk? And we were like, yeah, of course. And so we had a chat and we had another email come back basically saying, why would I need to find, why would I want to go and try and find another IT company? You are the best we've ever come across. So why would I want to do it? And what does it take for us to carry on working with you? Would you consider still working with us? And we were like, absolutely, 100% we'll still work with you. Love working with you. Just don't want to speak to this guy again. He's an absolute arse. and they were so good. And they said, cool, done. And we carried on working with them, and they were brilliant ever since. And that is it makes you feel really good. When you get that client that turns around and says, that's not been prompted, you're not asking for testimony. They're like, no, honestly, genuinely, you are fantastic. Please, whatever it takes, we'll work with you. Just please. And it was such a nice feeling.
Yeah, and I think that goes a long way to helping, the mental state as a business owner. Things like that when you're So that, if I was in an MSP shoes sitting through the bloodbath of last year, just, the physical, mental beating that everybody's taken, that's what I would be doing, is evaluating things like that in my business. And we implemented every quarter, we would do that. We ran everybody through kind of that. We made up our own, scoring system. And it had to do with a lot with things you believe in, your core values. And we started making different decisions about customers and prospects and, who we were going to bring on. So similar to what Dan said, we started looking for better quality customers that fit what we were looking at. And it was amazing when we started doing that when I finally sold, it was, I felt good about the core of the customers that we had. And that actually is what made it appealing for the company that ended up buying us, was because we did that, because of the core customers, because of the process that we had. But, I think that doesn't, going back to the original discussion on mental health of owners, IT owners in the last year, can you think of anything else? What would additional advice that you would give an IT owner that's kind of, still standing on the other side of this, for themselves and for their staff?
I would definitely say there's a lot more support now than there was a few years ago. And that's not a thing to sell like IT coaching. That's things like, communities online. There are so many communities I see popping up on LinkedIn. There's a guy I saw on LinkedIn. Can't for the life of me remember the name, but there's a guy who's basically set up a WhatsApp group, and he's got like 60 odd people in there, just all asking for help and some advice and tips and tricks. And there's just so much of that available, like things like the Tech Tribe, other communities, Facebook groups. There's all the kind of MSP Facebook groups that are out there. Just find the ones that gel with you and the way you work, and ones where you feel comfortable, and you can ask for that help. The IT community is a lot more open than it used to be. It's really, in my early stages, it was very much no one's giving away their secrets. No one wants to tell anybody else how it's done, because then they'll give away the secret sauce. It's just not like that. We all know everyone's selling the same products, selling the same services. It's just the quality of the service you deliver that makes a difference, and maybe how you package them up, and it's how you set yourselves apart. So whether you're going through technical challenge or fundamental challenges of running the businesses, there are people that have been there and done that, or are going through the same problems. Just ask for it. That's probably my main takeaway, I think, is ask for help. Even if you don't think you need it, just getting into a community to chat and be open about things, you might then discover. And a number of times I'd be reading posts and go, oh, no, I do have that problem. Let's, how have you fixed that? And then you can talk and run through it with them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, because that was one of the things that really frustrated me for a long time in the IT industry, that nobody wanted to share anything because they were afraid you're going to take their customers. And Matt Lee and I and Juan Fernandez, we had a long conversation about this. It has gotten better, but I still think we have a long way to go, and stop fighting ourselves in this community, and in our industry. And again, it starts with, kind of deleting that old mindset of running a company. And that's where I challenge a lot of the notions that I ran my last company with, because that's what everybody was doing. That's what everybody told me that the company should be doing. Everybody told me that I should be scaling, I should be growing, and I could not have a lifestyle business. And that's an interesting dynamic as I've done coaching, and you're doing coaching now, that just that perception of what IT folks especially think their company should look like. And that's one of the things that still kind of frustrates me, with the industry, because I see people being burnt out and being, I've seen people taking their own life because of the pressure that is put on them to run a business, and especially an IT business. And, some people just aren't cut for running a business. And I think just that has to change in our perception of what's acceptable. And that's the thing that I still am a bit frustrated with, by the gurus that are still kind of preaching and teaching things in the IT industry. because I bought into that. I bought into that hustle, grind, work your face off. You got to keep scaling. You got to keep growing. If you're not at 7 figures, you need to get there as soon as possible. And when you get to 7 figures and you hit that $1 million mark, now it's time to go to $2 million. Then you got to go to $5 million. So I want to talk a bit about that mindset shift that I think needs to change in our industry, because I think that is leading to a lot of the mental health issues, or a large contributor to the mental health issues we're seeing in our community especially. So, do you agree do you see that as being a problem in the folks that you've been coaching and trying to help?
I do not so much with the guys that I coach, but it's as an industry for sure. And the difficulty there is that everyone wants to aspire to those goals, or expectations are that everyone aspires to those goals. And for me, it was just nice to be able to kind of, we hit that 1 million turnover thing, which is, a great marketing thing for me to say, oh, I've hit 1 million and come work with me and all those kind of things. But actually, when you look back on things, you realize that you were doing a lot less work, making probably about the same money way earlier on in your journey. And whilst it's nice to of course hit that million and have the nice staff and the offices and those kind of things, but again, that was my choice. That's kind of where I wanted to get to, and I kind of almost got to that point and went, okay, that's cool. I've done that. I've checked that box. I'm probably not going to do it for another 20 years. Let's kind of call it here, and let's see what else we can do, and so what else we can achieve with our life. So I think that if you can just get that mindset change per se, or at least be open to the possibility that, hey, actually where you are now is just great. Just reiterate what you've got now, improve on things, automate things, just do the best you can with what you've got, and just improve on yourself rather than just constantly going out for the more clients and more staff. And actually, if you just step back, which lots of MSPs have this year, this year and last year, to be fair, they've had the chance to not step back, but to look more inwards at themselves and go, we need to do things differently, yep, because we're struggling, or because, we've got the time, because the customers have shut down, whatever it is. But we need to look at ourselves and see how we can really start changing things, and how can we be better and more efficient. And actually, that process in itself is such a big achievement for a lot of companies, just to, get more time, get more profit, and just get more out of their current situation, rather than just going for that whole kind of, achievable. It is achievable, but it's a lot of work, and it can be a lot of stress. So you just need to know what you're getting yourselves in for. That more stress is to come. More customers means more stress. More staff means more stress. And it's just maybe heading that stuff off before you get to it. Looking at outsourced HR companies, things like that you can just get rid of that off your plate straight away. That if you are keen on going through that journey, well, you've dealt with that problem ahead of time. You've got that kind of facility in place. So it's just, I think a lot of it is just awareness.
Yep.
Just being aware that what's going to come. And most people aren't aware and can't be aware because they've not done it before. It's a kind of, you have to kind of learn it.
Yeah, and I think, I guess two of the most distinct conversations that I've had in the last 7 years with MSPs. One of them was somebody that I was actually in a peer group with, goes back to 2012. Here we are, almost 10 years later, he's in the exact same spot as he was 10 years ago. Same amount of revenue, same amount of staff, same amount of problems, and that's what he is constantly, being fed, that I have to continue to grow. And that the frustrating part for me was when I finally had that conversation with him. I'm like, why do you need to grow? Oh, well, I'm part of this peer group still, and every time they go to a session, they put these famous people on stage, and you compare yourself to them, and I feel like that's what everybody in that group is doing. And you're looked down upon if you're not continuing to grow. And I just, flat out told him, and that's what he was coming to me to help him, figure out a way to scale his business and grow to get to that $1 million in revenue. And I asked him, you're at $500,000 a year right now in recurring revenue. Do you have what it takes to get from $500,000 to $1 million as far as time? And his whole plan is he wanted more time with his family. He wanted to be able to take off on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And when I helped him to see that that's not a reasonable expectation to have if you're going to continue to scale and grow, because you can attest to that too. You're going to need to add more staff to that to get to $1 million in revenue. You're going to have to add more customers to that. You're increasing, all of the challenges of running a business on yourself. And I don't know about you, but going from that $500,000 to $1 million, your profit margin doesn't double, even though your revenue doubles.
I think with that, because a lot of the focus is the turnover at that point, not the profit. And I remember seeing that when we hit the million, I was like, yeah, we've done the million. And then you go, oh, I really wish the profit was a bit more than that. And so then you focus on the profit. And the next year we did a lot better than profit because it's what you're focusing on. So, that was, definitely woke us up on that.
It was an interesting dynamic because I'm like, okay, would I rather have more profit at $500,000 and less problems, or the same or less profit just because we hit $1 million, but I just made my life a whole lot more complicated? And when I helped him to see that he's like, oh, you're right. So I'm like, why do you need to grow? He was a technician, true through and through. That's what he loved. He didn't love sales and marketing, didn't love that. I'm like, in order to get to $1 million, you're going to need to do that. Somebody's going to need to do that. And he'd made every mistake that we have. We hired a salesperson and expect them to go out and sell $500,000 worth of revenue. But he gave them no process to follow, no system to follow. But yet when he told me he was spending $3,000 a month to be part of this marketing peer group, and to have, I just looked at him, I'm like, that he told me point blank, he's been with for 10 years and has brought him 0 results. And I said, why are you spending $3,000 a month to get 0 results? Because that's what all my friends are doing. That's what everybody tells me I should do. I'm like,
social media is a big distraction, a big part of that as well. Because there are so many Facebook groups I'm a member of, and you just see them going, yeah, we just smashed another $250 a seat client. And you're looking at that, maybe you're comfortable within your IT business going, oh, I'd really like to close some $250 a seat clients. Let's just go and have a look. Let's just see. Let's see what the course is like. Yep. And then you sign up, you kind of get dragged into it all because it's just so alluring. But there's a lot of people will do that and get absolutely nothing from it, like you say. And it's just those 1 or 2 people that will do that, and they will, they will do it. They will grow the business, but it's and I see that through a lot of people I speak to. Is just not just that, but you're on LinkedIn and it's constantly just a shouting match of successes.
Yep.
Here's what we've achieved. Here's what we've done. Much like any social media, you're seeing all the good shiny stuff. You're not seeing anything behind the scenes and the struggles. And some people do share their struggles, but there's also I see a lot of people knowing that by sharing their struggles, it will gain a lot of attention. So they're kind of doing it on purpose to get the attention, which is such a difficult thing because you know what they're doing. So it's very difficult to share your actual real struggles because, it's very personal.
Yep.
And just constantly being in front of that. And we all know we kind of need to be on social media. LinkedIn's, obviously with your LinkedIn course, LinkedIn is a big part of for the IT world. Being on LinkedIn to talk to people and start discussions and get involved in the community. But you're still going to be surrounded with all these people. Look at that person over there. He's so successful. He's just won all these clients.
Yep.
It's a big distraction, and I don't really know if there's a fix for that other than just ignore it, disconnect from those people, stop, block them, whatever you can do. Just focus on you. The whole you do you thing is such a big piece of it.
And that it's okay. I'm going to go back to a few more comments of folks have done that too. So Raul said, he stopped giving out his cell phone number. Great tip there. Barbara said, yep, she went as far as completely removing all work-related stuff from her personal phone. So you're talking about social media. That is, I don't have any social media apps on my phone at all. Not LinkedIn. Even though I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn, I don't have it on my phone. But that was one of the choices that I made because, like you said, it's just default, and that's taken me a long time to change that, picking up your phone just to check stuff. And if it's on there, you're going to check, you're going to go down a rabbit hole, you're going to continue to feed that stuff that's out there. And I found that it was mentally distracting for me. And I can't tell you how much freer that I am not having that stuff on my phone.
I'd love
because
to
I'm
know, for
not
those of you
tempted.
watching and listening along, because I'm very much in this position. I really want to get rid of Facebook, but I'm still glued to it because of all the groups I've joined. Like, if the
Yeah.
groups were on a different platform, I would get rid of Facebook straight away. So just interested to know if anyone else is feeling the same.
Yeah, I could go down a complete rabbit hole on Facebook. I have three vendors that I'm part of, and all of their support and community channels are on Facebook. And yeah, I hate it. So if you're watching this on Facebook, I hate it. I'm never there. We broadcast this to Facebook just because, especially this topic, I think it's time for people to start looking at something different. But yeah, I'm curious to see too how many people are burning. I've got a lot of feedback when I've posted a few times about that or talked about it on the show. Robert Givens, so thank you, Robert, for joining the discussion. 6 months I've not had any work email or Teams on my phone. This has helped me with relaxing. So I'm not the only one. It is, and it is completely freeing when you are taking that choice to do those things. But yeah, social media is it is brutal on our self-esteem as entrepreneurs. And I think especially as introverted entrepreneurs. I started this discussion last week on the show where, I am an introvert by heart. Me doing this show is like completely the opposite of what I am. I usually just sit and I enjoy quiet time and being disconnected. But I think, especially this subject's just too important not to continue to talk about. But again, it's just people saying it's okay. I'm still trying to convince my wife and my family that it is a good thing and it is okay. I miss those days when we didn't even have cell phones. I remember in 2004, we didn't have the iPhone. We weren't connected 24/7. We could actually somewhat disconnect. But I think even though we have all this tech, that sometimes we need to I did a whole show about this. We need to break up with our tech, even if it's just for a day, for our own mental sanity as business owners and entrepreneurs. And again, it's one of those easy things to say, hard thing to implement. I did it 2 weeks ago. I think on your live, I think a few people chimed in. I think Robert actually commented on that on the live you did a couple weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I did 48 hours unplugged. Man, I can't tell you how, I logged out on Friday evening, did not touch a single device until Monday morning. Amazing thing, there wasn't much to do on Monday morning. It wasn't as bad as I had built up in my head on Sunday night. I'm like, I'm going to have a bunch of things to take care of on Monday morning. The earth didn't burn down. Things continued to happen even though I was disconnected. But it's just, we have that in our head that the world's going to burn down if we don't respond to a text message in 5 seconds. So Joseph said, I use 9Mail. Hadn't heard of that one. It isn't free, but it's only about $10. It allows me to only receive notifications for VIPs that I specify, mainly people in the C-suite. It's definitely helped my stress level. Available for Android and iOS. Thank you for that, Mike. I hadn't heard of that one. But you talked about another one of those coping strategies for MSPs, using your tools that you're already paying for, like ConnectWise. We did that. We had a separate board that VIPs would go to, which had separate notifications, which had all of those things. So if that's a concern of yours that, the CEO of my best customer is going to call me, or try to get a hold of me and I'm not going to be available, we started setting those expectations. And amazingly enough, your CEOs will understand that. They get it. So if you tell them, hey, I'm going to be unavailable, but if you tell them what you have in place, and that was the reassuring part for my customers was, you're going to be taken care of when I'm not there that day. We have we have a complete separate service board for you with notifications. It's not going to fall through the cracks. But, I need to do this to be able to keep, be at my best so that we can provide the best service for you. Customers loved it. They get it. And, but it was just that fear I had in my head that we're going to lose a customer if I take a day off. Barbara said too, she said, I am also happy about COVID in a different way, as I now spend approximately half hour to an hour a day digitally with my parents who are in their 80s in a different province. I give them my time now versus clients. I've been consulting since 2010 and 24/7 support. Her last comment, unplugging is freedom.
Amazing.
But again, it goes back to our choices. It is okay that we can do that. And I think as much bad has come out of COVID, I think that's one of the good things. And a few people chimed in on last week's show that it has humanized us, if anything. It's made it okay for us to be able to take that time. So if that's a fear that you have that, you're going to lose revenue, you're going to lose customers, I don't think that's going to be the case, especially now. I think now is really important going forward to be aware of what's happened, be aware of your own current mental state, and having a plan of action for being able to help yourself and your staff is important. Let's see here. So Dan chimed in too. Delegation. Said Richard Branson was asked how he built his businesses. He said delegate. Just be willing to accept the consequences of that choice. But I think it's less fear if we've created the systems and process. People know exactly how we would have done it because they know what the system and process is. So Bruce Skinner said, Dan Foote, brilliant. We do the same. It makes a great difference compared to the strategy if breathing in a wallet. Come this way, please. So, yeah, so it's not about breaking necks and cashing checks. Different mentality and we talked about that with Juan Fernandez and Matt Leaves. I think right now MSPs have the chance to completely redefine the industry more so than when you and I were running our shops. We have a chance to actually change the narrative of our seat at the table based upon what's happened in the last year. IT has kept everybody running in the last year. The economies across the globe would be much worse if all of the IT folks weren't keeping things running. But I think we're starting to see it, and I'm starting to see the toll that it's actually taking on people. And I didn't touch on the second conversation that I had with an MSP over the last year. A gentleman in his 30s, about ready to get married, just not having fun at all. He's completely burnt out from running 24/7. And when he reached out through LinkedIn, watched one of the shows, reached out, and it was an amazing conversation that I had with him because I told him, he fully admitted that he wasn't cut out to run a business, but he didn't know where to go from there because everybody's telling him he needs to sell his way out of it. He needs to sell his way to get the techs to actually do the work, but he just didn't have it in him to do it. And that's what I told him. It's, what do you want to do? And that it is okay, and if you're an MSP, if you love the tech and want to stay in that industry, to partner together, to combine forces with another MSP. And he's like, it was interesting because it got dead quiet on the phone. I'm like, he was crying on the phone. And he told me I was the first person to tell him that was okay to do that. That he had been on 3 other coaching programs with people that were telling him just the opposite. Anyway, he contacted me 6 months later and said he had, partnered with another MSP, transitioned over his business, and is now studying. He's going through firefighter school. And he said he's never been happier in his life. But that's when it hit me that, it's okay to say that you can do something different. And he said, that's what I got from watching your show. I don't even remember what I said. But he said, that's what I got from watching your show is you told me that it was okay to do what's necessary for me. And he said that was the complete opposite of what everybody's been telling me for the last 10 years. And, that I think is the dynamic that has to change in the industry is, it has to change that it's okay to run a lifestyle business. That if you want to do the tech just to run the tech and have a small company, that it's okay. And you don't have to get to $1 million to be successful. And that, that was one of the takeaways that I wanted, to talk about on the show do you still see that too being projected, that you can't have a small business and be in IT?
Very much so. Like you say, the pressure is on. Pressure is on to grow, to scale. Even all the MSP vendor events I was at before were always actually they were always focusing on what's your exit plan. You're going to scale, you're going to grow, you're going to sell. And at the time, I struggled with that because I didn't have an exit plan, and I was very adamant I didn't need an exit plan. So I kind of ignored a lot of that stuff. In hindsight, maybe I should have focused on that a bit more. But knowing where your kind of goals are, I think that's a big part of it. Of what are you trying to do here? Because for me, it started off being a case of I want to run a business, grow a business, get to a certain size, because I just felt, I had a picture inside my head of, if we get to like 30 staff, that feels like a good size. We can cover each other's work. We can get to that size, and then we're just going to kind of reinvent ourselves, like we said earlier, of just improving, and just do that until retirement. And I struggled so much to go from that mentality to actually getting to a size we were comfortable with, and we were happy with how the business was going, and we were on the up and up. And everyone has their struggles, but we were shooting for the moon essentially. And then I just sat down one day and went, what are we doing here? Is this going to be us until we retire? Is this going to be us for another 20 or 30 years? We could do so much more with our lives in 10 or 20 years. I don't want to just pigeonhole ourselves into we run an IT company. It's a great place to be, and meeting tons of great people and faces and all the kind of experiences you get with that. But there's so much more out there that you can go get. And for me, selling and exiting the business has opened so many more doors that I never knew even existed. And for me, a massive video itself has opened so many doors by itself. And there's a whole world out there. And it's one of these things that everyone, employees think it of themselves when they're stuck in a company. They can't see the other side of it. That you always think the grass is greener, but you're never too sure, so you don't want to kind of jump and make that move. But it can be that way with MSPs. You can exit the business, you can exit successfully, and go on to do other things. And both you and me, we had no plans really, or expectations of what was going to happen after we left. We just kind of found our own way, and I absolutely love what I'm doing now. I miss that feeling, and I'm so glad I've got it back again. Much like you were saying before, it's fun to have a passion again. And for me, I just have so many passions. I'm trying to figure out how much time to spend on each of them at the moment. But just to be in that position, and again, it's that choice of knowing you have the choice. So don't feel like you're pigeonholed into running this business forever. You can change your mind. You can have goals. Once you get to those goals, you then execute into the next thing. I say quite openly, I made a video about how what made me different as an MSP, or made my company different as an MSP, is this was us until retirement. I'm going to be here for the next 30 years. Publicly, everyone saw it. Everyone heard me say that. And then I think it might have been less than 6 months after we'd sold the business. So things change very, very quickly, and it's okay that things can change.
Yep. And I think, that's hopefully that's come across in the show, or things that you can change if you want to stay. It's up to you. It's up to doing what's necessary for you. So Dan said too, I decided to seek therapy in 2018 for my workaholism, helped identify my people-pleasing nature so I could understand it and address it. It's a constant challenge. It helped talking to someone disconnected from my day-to-day. And, I think good for you, Dan, for acknowledging it and getting the help. Because I have sought help too over since I got out of the business, to kind of break some of the things that were just bad habits and coping mechanisms. And I think that was kind of one of the biggest changes for me over the last year with COVID, because we didn't have our typical coping mechanisms, which for me, being a workaholic, was to work, and for me to be home and to fight that urge to want to work 24/7 was difficult. But yeah, I think, I think there's a lot of people that have a lot to offer inside the IT industry doing something besides IT. So yeah, I thank you for saying that, Pete, is telling people that, it can be, you're not stuck. You're not stuck with your business just because you've been running it for 10 or 15 years even. If you want to do what you want to do it. Don't let other people make you feel guilty for it. Um, and again, being as introverts, being people pleasing, which is most of our industry, that it's okay to take a different path. And you can do what's best for you and your family. And I think that's really important to do more than ever now. So,
And it feels horrible, that situation. Like you talk about feeling guilty, and I still feel guilty for taking that decision, that choice away from like, my staff and my co-directors and those kind of things, because essentially it was my decision at that point that we wanted to sell. So I feel guilty, and I'll still feel guilty for a long time. But I also know that it was the right thing for me, and I couldn't have carried on. My heart wasn't in it anymore, and I think just recognizing that is is a big part of it.
yeah, and that's where I was, where I started, I was writing checks that my body couldn't cash anymore when I got out. So, and I see a lot of that, the demographic of the IT industry. I mean, a lot of folks have been in the IT industry for 10, 20, 30 years. It's okay to do something different now while you actually are still upright. And that's really what kind of forced the decision for me when I sold the business that year. Two people that I knew closely in the industry had died, and that's where I was. I was 40 years old that year, and I was like, I don't see myself doing this another 10 years. And the two people that had passed away didn't hit 50, and I'm like, I don't want that to be me, and that I could do something different. It was I had some guilt for a long time because you're leaving. We had customers that were with us from the beginning, 10 years, and I had personal relationships with a lot of them. Where our kids knew each other, and you go in there and they ask about your kids and you ask about theirs. So it's a personal relationship, but it was difficult. It was understood, but you can still have friends on the other side of that as well, because that same director contacted me 4 years later when her daughter turned 16 and she needed to get her a cell phone. She didn't call her IT provider. She called me. And, so that told me that many people are okay with the decision you make, and it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But that's what I needed to do at the time. My body was not happy with me at 40 years old. And I remember it vividly even when we had merged with the company, because I thought, okay, now it's not all on me. I'm now part of an organization. I'm managing 17 people versus 5, and that it's going to be better. And 6 months in doing that, it actually got worse. And that's when I decided, okay, I have to do something different, because I remember giving the last in-person public presentation that I did was in downtown Cleveland in November that year with 101-degree temperature. And I remember I had been sick for 3 days leading up to that. But my two business partners had no clue. I mean, I'm like cold sweat all day in the office, just, everything flu related, but still got up and gave that presentation. And I remember, afterwards I'm going home and they're like, hey, you're not look too good. I'm like, I've been sick for 3 days, and people had no clue, because everybody's got their heads down trying to figure stuff out, trying to build, trying to grow, trying to scale. People around you didn't have a clue. And that's when I knew that the month after that I spent with pneumonia. And that's when I knew that I had to do something differently for a number of reasons. But I see that too. A lot of people are writing checks their body can't cash. But it's okay to do something different. So, yes, Bruce said too, technology is a poor master but a good servant. Turn off all your notifications. The world will not stop. And I love the comments. I love the conversation that we've had. I know we're running at an hour and a half. I knew we would go long on this. I know it's in the evening time for you too, my friend. See here. Chris said, we found it costly and difficult to get a passionate staff member who enjoys their job. I think we can take it. What would be your take on that, or your advice to Chris with that, Pete?
Pardon me. One of the first things that we changed in terms of our recruitment was hiring on personality. It's finding that passion rather than focusing on technical skills. you can teach technical skills, you can sit on webinars and training courses and all those kind of things, but finding that person that is, really appreciative that you've got the opportunity to have a job, the opportunity to learn, that's like the biggest thing that I look for. And I noticed the big shift in the quality of people coming through when you started focusing not just purely on that, but it makes a good 90% of the decision of, are they the right person? Do they have the right attitude? Are they helpful? Are they willing to learn? And then as soon as they come through the door, you can just set them to work. Here's all the training stuff. Let's just get you skilled up. You've got the right personality. You're great with customers, great with staff. You get on really well. Let's just get you on that learning train. That's
Yep.
probably the biggest thing. Which then means you maybe can look at some. I noticed a few comments looking at the likes of apprentices.
Yep. That's what he said. He's thinking
We've
about
got
getting an
lots of
apprentice.
schemes over here
Yep.
where you can get free staff essentially for 6 months that's funded by the government, getting people back into work again. So there are schemes like that you can look at, and again, just try and focus on finding the right people and getting those people skilled up once they're in there.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott, for contributing to the conversation. Said he's been thinking about hiring an apprentice to grow over time. They hired a digital marketing apprentice last year. The best thing we ever did. So I'm going to give you a quick tip too. Again, based upon the economy, at least here in the States, but I think it's globally as well. The hospitality industry. My best tech was actually running the front desk at a hotel. That's where he was working when I hired him. And talking he was good under pressure. Think about front desk staff at a hotel. They deal with all kinds of crap. And that's what I found. He could handle himself under pressure. He was good with people. He was personal. Had some technical ability. He gamed after hours. Had the kind of a passion for tech. But I taught him everything he knew from, how to run help desk. But that was my best hire. It came from an industry that I would have never looked. But there's a lot of unemployed people in the hospitality industry right now. So if I'm going to give a quick tip, hire somebody that's maybe run a front desk at a hotel. That'll be my quick tip for the day. Let's see here. Lots of folks commenting that know each other in the group. I figure we get a lot of that. That's why I love this industry. It's a very tight-knit industry as well. So yes, he said, yep, what works for us may not work for you. Accept it, move forward. But yes, you can do things differently. And so he said, Adam agrees, always different over here. Our company ethos is we're fully behind our team. I don't believe in shouting at people. I think that can be a contributing factor too, is take your time when you're hiring. That was one of the things that I didn't do early on running an MSP. I would just hire anybody that could fog a mirror and type on a keyboard. But when we started taking our time and walking through, like you said, learning personalities, that was more important than the technical abilities. But again, as business owners, we have to take the time to hire better. We can't just expect people to run like us out of the gate and have that much passion for
I found
our
that on the
company.
hiring, and it's difficult to do now because you can't go into a pub because they're all closed, but they're opening soon.
Yep.
Just make it so much more relaxed on the whole interview process. Take them out, have a beer, have a burger and chips, whatever it is. Just have them in that relaxed environment because you get to see so much more of their personality rather
Yep.
than the whole formal, suited and booted. Because anyone can say anything in an interview, and you have no idea if that's true or not. You
Yep.
only find out when you hire them. So get them get them as comfortable as you can do, and then just have a chat.
Yep. Dan did have a question for you. He said, Pete, how did you vet your PA? What was the process like for your personal assistant?
I actually went off the back of Paul Green's recommendation. So there's a company called Time Etc. Time ETC. I think it's a UK-based company, but we just got one through there, and there wasn't much of a vetting process. It was they got one assigned to us, so I had a chat with her. We had like a video call. We hit it off really well, and she's kind of capable and doing everything I needed to do, which is great because I just give her more and more stuff every month, and what I'm paying her keeps going up and up and up, and that's where we were chatting before. I'm now getting to the stage of like, oh, maybe I should hire someone. It's like, no, I don't want to hire someone. I want to outsource.
Yep. Yeah, perfect. I'm just making sure we got all the questions. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. It's the evening time here. So one last comment from Barbara. She said, focus on your quality clients, the ones that know you work to live, not live to work. Also use AI, work smarter, not harder. So that would be one of my recommendations for MSPs is to use your tools, the tools that you're already paying money for, make them work harder for you. because I think that is one of the most, our PSA tool is one of the most underutilized tools for most MSPs. I still find that. So yeah, utilize your tools to be able to take that workload off. But having that built into your process and your structure of your week is super important. If you wait till the end of the month or the end of the quarter, that's too long. We would do that. We would take an hour to 90 minutes every Friday afternoon with my staff. We shut the help desk down, and all of our customers knew that between 1 and about 2:30 that we would be closed. And this is what we were doing. This is why we're closed. We're looking at all of our service tickets to make sure that we're providing the best service possible, to make sure that our service is best, the best service it can be. Customers love that. And again, the staff loved that because that's what we would do. We would look at all of those service tickets and then I would task them to come up with a process. And then all you're doing is approving the work that they've done and putting that SOP down for the next time that ticket comes in. But doing that every Friday and having that built into your schedule, it will never happen if you don't put it on the schedule. That's what I found. But it has to be on your schedule for doing that regular, and that's what we would look at. Can ConnectWise do this? Can Continuum do this? Whatever the tools you're using now, I guarantee you there's probably a tool that can pretty much do most of, the tech work that we do. It's just taking the time to go figure it out.
I got a bit on those tools actually. So you mentioned touching back on where you were talking about like merging and combining companies and those kind of things. I found, through lots of discussions that make sure you've got those processes and tools and stuff in place in your business, because if you then go and merge or acquire or whatever it is, whether it's a large or a small company, if they haven't got those processes and you haven't got those processes, then it's so difficult, and merging the two together is near impossible. But if you've got everything in place, then they can just kind of fall in line with the way you do things. So if you're still really in the midst of, you're trying to deploy ConnectWise or you're trying to deploy Autotask and your RMM tools, and you still don't know how it's all working, introducing that extra company into the mix is kind of a bit of a recipe for disaster, I've seen in some situations, because now you've got the hassle of, oh shit, what do we do with all of this stuff now?
Right.
Whereas actually, if you've got that all in place firsthand, you just go, hey, that's great. We'll just lift up this, put it into our systems, and now we're following our processes again, but now with these staff and these extra customers. So just a little tidbit that I've kind of picked up in a few discussions.
That's a perfect one, because, and again, if you're thinking about selling and exiting your MSP, that was one of the most deciding factors, was the industries that we had chosen to specialize as verticals. So it was attorneys and property management companies, and the fact that we had systems, process, configurations, all of that stuff was working and dialed in ConnectWise. That's why the company wanted to buy us. We had 3 companies here in Ohio that wanted to buy us because they knew that that's what we had in place. And it was an easy transition. I think it took ConnectWise less than a day to transfer all of our stuff into the new company. But the difficult part was, I had a company that was bigger than us that had bought us, but closed loop was not even enabled in ConnectWise. The receptionist was actually taking her emails and creating tickets inside of ConnectWise. And I learned that on the second day I was there, and I was like, you're kidding me, right? She's like, yeah, the tickets don't automatically create themselves. So
we
that's
do everything manually here. It's fine, isn't it?
I was like, you got to be kidding me that's all you do all day is copy and paste stuff from your emails, because the customers are emailing you directly with tickets and not in ConnectWise. She's like, yeah, we're going to fix that. So literally 20 minutes later, I went in, fixed ConnectWise. The problem I had is it spit out 3 years worth of tickets. So yeah, my other 2 partners called me and said, what in the world's going on? I'm like, don't worry about it. It'll be done soon. Nothing's on fire. I fixed the problem. I fixed the glitch. But yeah, just, again, utilize your tools for what they're, I think if you take the time to do that, that will save you a lot of headaches. It looks like comments have stopped coming into eCam. So Barbara said, yes, great idea for a Friday afternoon in debriefing your week. But if you wait too long, it never happens. It has to be baked into your schedule. So, Pete, any other parting words for MSPs and being able to help improve mental health, or how did they get a hold of you? I'll pop your LinkedIn up here as well. Connect with Pete on YouTube. Subscribe to his YouTube channel if you're not already. I do. I think you come out videos twice a week, so I get alerts when your stuff pops up. But yeah, any other parting shots, parting words to MSPs?
That's pretty much it. I think going back to the chat from the guys that were chatting earlier, just if you need help, then ask for it. Go and speak to people that have been there and done that. I think is important as well. Find the ex MSP owners out there, and that's not a thing to sell my services, but the advice you can get from people that have been there and done that. There are a ton of coaches, and this is kind of why I started getting into the coaching scheme. Is that there are a ton of coaches out there that haven't actually run their own company. They come at you with all the marketing good stuff and make everything sound really pretty, but they just don't understand the challenges. So find those communities, find those people. Ping me a message on LinkedIn or Facebook, on Twitter, like whatever your social channel is. TikTok, I'm on there too, apparently. Just connect with people. There's so much help out there. You just have to ask for it.
Yep. Yeah, and you don't have to fight everything alone. There's plenty of us out here that are willing to help. And again, it's about taking our industry and elevating it forward. So, Pete, thank you so much for joining us today, and for the second time. Hopefully this 2-hour marathon won't put you into therapy and won't put you behind a Corona bottle in a little bit. So, yeah,
no,
thank you.
Off to play Call of Duty. That's how my life has changed now. I get time to play computer games again.
All right, thanks, man. Thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
So that's going to wrap our show for this week. I want to thank you so much for joining in this discussion, and I want this to be the beginning of a discussion around mental health and the crisis that I don't think that we fully are comprehending, the crisis that we're going to see in the IT industry going forward. But hopefully Pete and I have encouraged you to take some practical things inside of your business now, to be able to fight the mental health challenges that you and your staff are going through. And as an entrepreneur, that you do not have to go through everything on your own. You're not alone. There's other crazy people out here just like you, that are willing to help, that are willing to contribute, that are willing to give back everything that we've done right and wrong, and to be able to help you do what is necessary. Again, this is the Do What Is Necessary live stream. This is about doing what is necessary for you, not for me because that looks different, not from Pete because that looks different. This is about doing what is absolutely necessary for you. So thanks again for joining the show today. Those of you who jumped on live, if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. Please let me know where you're watching from. Please let me know if there's anything that we can do to help you in your journey as an entrepreneur. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Thanks. This is Andrew Moon. Always stay humble and kind, and always do what is necessary. Talk to you soon.